Okay, hello everyone. So Dr. Geeta Bensel is going to give a presentation on the G-11 program first, and then we will have the Q&A session. So if there's a question you want to ask, just please raise your hand and I'm going to unmute you. And after your question is answered, please make sure to lower your hand and also put your question in the chat so we have a record of all the questions that were asked. And if you have any questions, just please feel free to message me in the chat.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it for me. Geeta, do you want to get started?
Yeah, I can. So just with the introductions, as Jane said, this is going to be very interactive. I don't want to sit here and lecture, but I will spend the first, 30 minutes or so just going over the program and the requirements, etc. But I want to let this be more for you and from you, so I can answer questions. I understand that there are a lot of ambiguities in the FOA that also has caused us some I don't want to really say concerns, but some issues were raised even for us because of those ambiguities, and I wanted to clarify that. So that's why, even though this is in its final stages and it's going to be renewed, this FOA or NOFO is going to be renewed, I wanted to have the opportunity to be able to offer this webinar for the last round. And also to learn from you what the issues have been, so that when we do renew this program, which I'm definitely going to try and do, whether it gets passed or not, that will be up to the advisory board and the discussions that happen later on. But I definitely am going to take all these suggestions and the points that needed to be clarified and try to propose that the new concept again, so that we can continue to have this program, which I believe many of you think is very important and is needed, and so do we. So that was the purpose of doing this, even though I know it's very late in the game in terms of the time that this NOFO has been on the street. So let me go ahead and get started. I know people may be joining. I cannot see how many. What was this? Okay.
We have about 67.
We have, yeah. So
Yeah.
I will get started now. And like I said, please do not feel shy. I know many of you are new. I don't recognize names on grants, etc. But maybe you have applied. Maybe you want to know how to apply. But I don't want anyone to be shy. If you think you were not able to speak up and ask your questions, put it in the chat, because we want to address all the questions, all the doubts, all clarifications that others need. So make this be useful for both you as well as me and program and all of us, so that we can do this together. Okay, so I don't want to have any of you be shy and not ask questions. One way or another, do ask your questions. So so this is one of two pre-application webinars that I'm having for the NOFO, that is entitled Infrastructure Development Training Program for Critical HIV Research in Low and Middle Income Country Institutions. So the reason I read this out, if you noticed, it said Critical HIV Research in low and middle income countries, and it's also to build infrastructure for the research atmosphere. So these are the 2 points that I want to try and emphasize and clarify a little. So this is PAR 22-153. We have one last submission date this year in August. And let's just quickly go over it and up. It's not moving forward. So sorry about that. So going back to the webinar, so I just wanted to give you a very brief account of what this program was about. This program called the infrastructure, what we call as the Infrastructure Development Program. This was started as an extramural associates program way back in the 1970s, late 1970s, when the Office of the Director, NIH, recognized that there was a need to develop the institutions that were traditionally underrepresented in research, mainly women's colleges, institutions that were predominantly minorities, that catered to minority students and other underrepresented minorities. So we could make those institutions be trained, be given the knowledge, be given the opportunities to get into the research workforce, and that was traditionally not being done in those early days. Late 1970s, they started this program. Later on, they entrusted NICHD with overseeing this program through small grant mechanisms. And so this was continued from 1978 all the way down to 2012, when the Fogarty got in somewhere around 2008 or so. They got in, they partnered with this program, the EAP program, for a bit, and then when they started awarding grants, Fogarty got in there because they were interested in helping out with the LMIC institutions infrastructure development. But then through the years, these went through different changes, different FOAs, and then finally we had our own program somewhere in the in 2012, and we commonly this program is called the G-11 program, but it actually won't move. Okay, so this is called the Extramural Associates Research Development Award, the ERDA program. But before I tell you a little bit more about that, let me give you another history over here, which is that Fogarty started around the same time, our first training program. And the very first training programs that we started in 1988 was for the HIV research and training. And those days it was called the ATRIP program, the ICOTA TB program. So those were all the beginnings of Fogarty's D43 training programs. And therefore, right now we call this evolved again to become the HIV research training program, which we commonly say HIV RT. And within this HIV RT program, you have the D43, which is the training grant program, and then the D71, which is a planning grant that then allows you to come in with a full D43. And the last one that I have mentioned here is the G11. We call it the G11 program only because these are all mechanisms, but actually it is the research infrastructure development program, and it is actually under in the NIH books, it's called the ERDA program, EARDA. That is the name of that program. So this G11 program, we'll just continue to use the term G11, but know that it is just a mechanism. This was, like I said, this program, the title is up there, uses the G11 mechanism. And the basic premise over here is that a lot of the LMIC institutions, when they started research, the way the grants were awarded to individuals who then distributed the awards to others, there wasn't a concerted effort within the institutions to have for example, a research administration office, the pre-award management, post-award management of the grants, other infrastructure needs, other support services that were needed. There wasn't something like that available. And so the goal for the program that Fogarty finally ended wanting to do for the LMICs is that we wanted to provide the support for successful grant activities. And to be able to do that, we needed to strengthen the scientific capacity of the LMIC institutions by enhancing the functional resources required to conduct high quality research. So you know that when you do grants, when you manage grants, when you network for grants, you need a lot of the support services. And that was one of the goals for this particular program. This was also going to be collaborative applications from the US and LMIC institutions to develop joint programs to achieve this, the technical, administrative, financial management expertise required for several research infrastructure support functions. And so here you could have a US institution apply along with an LMIC institution as multiple PI, or an LMIC collaboration. You could have it any which way you want, but in all cases, it was to have the activity take place in the LMIC institution and to build the infrastructure that was required for research activities in the LMIC institution. So even if you had a USPI, the work had to be done in the LMIC institution. And the proposed training is for functional enhancement of the resources needed to support the institution's research community. And it is not for an individual program. So the goal has always been, since 2012, when this new program was started, was to have institutional capacity being built and not just the individual grants. So how do you start, or how do you go about thinking about starting a G-11 program? So the first thing you have to think about is what are those infrastructure needs that are required for you to conduct the research that is being conducted at your institutions. So that itself tells you that there has to have been, or there has to be, some amount of research activity that is already being conducted at the institution, so that then you can understand what gaps there are in terms of the support services that are needed, and that you can then apply for this ERDA program to then fulfill those or to address those gap areas. So the first thing is to identify that infrastructure needs at your institution. Then you want to have buy-in from your institution. Remember, I said that this was an institutional capacity building, institutional infrastructure development program. So you need to get buy-in from the institutional leaders that yes, they would support this, as well as that there was going to be a sustainability associated with it, that there was a sustainment plan. It's not about getting this grant once and getting something done and then it doesn't go anywhere because it doesn't help anybody. And neither did it help the NIH nor you. So that is something that that you should be thinking about before you think about writing one. And then propose plans for the sustainment. I just said that. On the right hand side, you know, looking at the screen, are all the different areas that we listed in the FOA, thinking that those were some important areas, and not all of them will apply to everybody. You can pick and choose, and there may be at the end, I wrote down there other areas with appropriate justification. You may find that in your particular institution, you may need something different, but as long as you describe that and have the justification for that, those are also pretty viable as well as welcome, because we cannot think of everything that everybody needs. So the second thing you think about is eligibility when you start writing a grant. The eligibility again is defined on the Fogarty website. If you go under grants and if you go under programs, you will find all the information that you want. If they're confusing, you can always talk to the program officer associated with any program. You can definitely call me if it is regarding HIV. But the eligibility criteria is one of the other things to look at. And that would be that the institutions, of course, have to be from the LMIC countries, low and middle income countries. But there was a slight nuances to this eligibility, which is that so low income countries are definitely eligible, middle income countries are eligible, and within the middle income countries you have the lower middle income countries and the upper middle income countries. And I put down in bullet number 2 is it, and we go by the World Bank classification that changes every July or gets updated every July. So you should always, before you apply, make sure that your country is eligible for the World Bank classification guidelines. And so the upper middle income, lower middle income countries are eligible, but the upper middle income countries, if they belong to the G20 nations, then they are not eligible for the training program. In 2019, May of 2019, this started applying to the G-11 programs. Up until then, G-11 programs were able to apply, but since 2019, those upper middle income countries that also belong to the G20 nations were not eligible for the G-11 program because again, you can read up on the website, but there was the understanding that they are pretty well established in terms of infrastructure, that they did not need a grant from the NIH for that. The applicant institutions must have the required faculty, staff, and the potential training facilities on site to conduct the proposed institutional program. So you want to make sure that the bullet above that also talks about the applicant institutions. They should have a high quality research going on. And definitely, because this is coming out of the HIV program, which I'm not sure I explained very well, which I will do in a little bit, that there also should be some HIV research, substantial amount of HIV research going on at your institutions, so that the infrastructure that needs to be developed is really going to be helpful for the research programs that are already existing, and to bring in more new research programs. And the reason I said that the HIV research, substantial amount of HIV research needs to be going on at the institutions is because, if you remember, I told you that the HIV RT programs were the earliest training programs that began, and this, and that's where all the money was those days. And so when, and those days also, the HIV programs were residing with a couple of individuals who then could distribute it to other institutions and so on. So it was really focused on developing the individual and not the institutions. In 2013 is when we changed the roles and said, now we need to develop the institutions, not just individual people, because individuals get trained and then leave, and the institutions are left hanging. So we made this really for the institution. And because it began like that with HIV money, we were able to, when we spend HIV money, there's another office at the NIH called the Office of AIDS Research that that provides the allocations for the rest of NIH, on how to spend their money for HIV/AIDS research. And so we always have to get their approval or concurrence from the OAR to make sure that what we are doing is related to HIV and the spending is related to HIV. So that's where the money was. And that's where we decided to start this G-11 program, or this ERDA program, to build a research capacity, or infrastructure capacity at the LMIC institutions. And because we needed to have the HIV money being spent on research activities related to HIV, we had to have the HIV communities involved. We had to have substantial HIV research going on there. And that's how we got buy-in from the Office of AIDS Research to spend HIV dollars. And that has continued. We haven't been able to change it. The idea was that even if one community builds up the research infrastructure, it actually will filter over to the institution, and the same teachings and learnings can be applied to any of the other programs. And that was the whole thought behind it, that just because it was HIV money, and only HIV researchers were applying to it, that doesn't mean that it cannot spill over to the institution if everybody was following, what the original goal was to build institutional capacity. And that's where we have a lot of the discrepancy right now. So, whoops. So I talked about the institutional eligibility. Coming now to the individual eligibility of the individual PDPIs. So pretty much any individual, this is general NIH rules, with the skills, knowledge, and the resources available that they could use, are eligible to apply for this program. And they should be obviously able to carry out, if they're not carrying it out, organize the others who are able to work on such programs to be able to manage this program. So we want to have established experts in the proposed research infrastructure function. And what that means is that, let's say you're building a research administration capacity, it needs to be of, obviously faculty know, people that apply for grants know what is needed. So it needs to be somebody like that who has the knowledge of what it takes to build a research administration office. It may be a faculty, but that faculty is interested and vested in developing that office. Let's take biostatistics training. We want to build it for the institution, for everybody else at the institution, but it needs to be somebody who understands the needs of the HIV community, because again, I'm still sticking to the FOA as it is currently laid out, to know that these are the kinds of biostatistics needs and the HIV community needs. Clinical trials needs a certain way, animal studies needs it a certain other way. So that is why you need somebody knowledgeable in all of these different areas. And then they should have the experience in supporting high priority HIV research, which I just went over. Again, this is artificial in terms of the HIV, but right now the NOFO says you have to have HIV expertise. So we should just go with that. How we change it in the future to encompass others that are non-HIV researchers to apply for, we will have to deal with later. But for now, this is what the FOA says, and I'm just clarifying what the FOA is saying. Okay, I can't read the full slide, but so this is about letters of intent. So if you're reading through and before you apply, you should definitely read through all of the sections of the NOFO or the FOA. So one of the recommendations there is to submit a letter of intent. It's also called the LOI. And why is that important? It's not mandatory. We don't make it mandatory because not everybody really needs to get it. This is not about getting permission. Okay, you are allowed to come in and apply to any of the nurses. This is not about permission. This is about helping the NIH. So the letter of intent with the information that is asked for in the NOFO. So please go and make sure that you read that. It helps the review staff in assembling a good review committee without conflicts and so on. So they, but if everybody is named, if a lot of people are named in the in your applications, then they are automatically disqualified from being reviewers, and that way we lose the reviewer pool too. So we want to make sure that we also don't invite someone and then find out later on that they are conflicted, and then we've lost valuable time because we don't get much time to do all of this. So that's one reason. The other reason is for the program officer like me to look at who is applying, where are they applying from, who are their partners, what are they going to be working on, so that, like I was telling you, right now I can look at it and say, no, this isn't going to be viable, go back and change it or something, some advice that I can give you before you waste a lot of time writing up an application that isn't going to go anywhere, right? So we want to be able to avoid such situations. So that's another reason why we would, it is always good to have a letter of intent. Again, it doesn't have to be exactly on the deadline date, but we give you 1 month prior to the submission deadline, only because it'll take you at least that much time to write a grant. So if I say no 15 days before, you've already invested so much time and effort that it's not worth anybody's effort to then stop it at that point, only to go to review and then get not scored well. So an LOI is good. It's not mandatory. I'm not forcing you, but if you do plan on applying for this grant, an LOI is always good to have. Check the institutional eligibility, PDPI eligibility before you start submitting. So make sure that you know that your country is eligible, your PIs are eligible, you have the right kind of people who are able to do the training, etc. All of this background information is very important before you actually sit down and start writing that. The applications will be, so this is now addressing the review criteria. The applications will be, again, I'm not reading out everything that is in the FOA. You should still go to the FOA and get all the correct information from there. This information is correct, but I'm just summarizing it and highlighting the important things here. I'm not definitely putting down every single thing, but making you understand how to go about writing this grant application. I mean, application for a grant if you are planning on doing that. So in the review, I mean, during the review process, we program have given them good guidance. Again, it's in the FOAs. Nothing is hidden from anybody. They review people. So that is CSR, the Center for Scientific Research, who does the reviews, as well as the PO, as well as the applicant community, all have the same information. And that is in the FOA on two sections. One is the application submission guidance. The other one is in the review criteria. I believe it's section 5. So this is just summarized from there. The applications will be evaluated for scientific and technical merit by this Center for Scientific Research. And you all know what that peer review system is about. You get an impact score. So when you finally get your summary statement, you get what's called an impact score. And the impact score has nothing to do with the individual criteria scores that you will read in your summary statement. It is a score that kind of tells us the likelihood for the project to exert a sustained I don't know what I can't read anymore, but a sustained influence on the research environment in the at the institutional level. Remember, these are for infrastructure development. Therefore, you want to have something that would be impactful in terms of having that that infrastructure developed and sustained at your institution, and what kind of an effect, what kind of an impact does that finally have? And those will come up in your application as you write it. What do you think are the measures of success? What do you think are the kind of impact that you wanted? Is it increasing in the number of grants if you've written up a research administration type grant, or is it you know, whatever it is, you know, depending upon what it is that you are focusing on, you're going to have something that would tell you, yeah, I've been successful after this grant. So there are criteria here. Again, one thing I wanted to also tell you is that sometimes those FOAs could become confusing, only because it does for us too, because we have to follow certain systems that the NIH Office of Extramural Research sets for us. So there are some templates that we have to use, and there are some questions that they ask us, and there are some form language that we cannot change, and sometimes they may clash. And that's why when you get into any kind of a situation where you are confused, call up the program officer right away. Don't just, you know, neglect that, because these are not things that anybody does deliberately. It's just the way the different units of the NIH operate. And so sometimes things do get a little confusing. So in this case, even though it is considered to be a training grant, it is not a D43 training grant. It is not about getting degrees. This is following what is called a research project, meaning significance, investigators, approach, environment, all our innovation, all of those things that are not traditionally in a D43 training grant review criteria. These are following a research project format, even though this is considered to be a training program. So anyway, knowing that, in this case, the significance is going to be the rationale for why you're selecting that specific infrastructure development program, or that specific infrastructure development area for your institution. Again, I'm stressing the word institution. This is not about your own program. Maybe Q&A sessions, I can tell you why I keep harping upon that. The investigator should be experienced in the infrastructure support function, also in HIV research, and I've already gone over that. So you want to have someone who has a little bit of a knowledge about that infrastructure area that they want to develop, and why is it important for HIV research, at least as far as this NOFO is concerned. Innovation. Innovation is important, but not, not absolutely important here, because there's just so much innovation you can have when you do training programs. But there's a certain level of innovation you can think about when you think about strategies for trying to train for trying to maintain those trainees in the institution so that they can continue with that support function. You know, people learn and they find better jobs, they move away. What can you do what is the innovation you can bring in here to give the opportunity for these people to continue to stay at this institution and build up that institution's infrastructure or the research environment through this infrastructure development. So there's some innovation that you could think of. So in terms of the approach, so basically once you've decided this is what you want to do, what are your approaches going to be? How are you going to continue with that training? Are you going to have collaborators? If you don't have the full expertise, do you have people that you could bring in to fulfill some of those functions, those training functions? What impact is this once you've finished with this, what kind of an impact is it going to have? You need to address that. It's not about just doing it and my grant is done and it's finished. No, it's not. It's going to be what is the life after the grant? Have you been able to establish such that the institution is now able to continue on? And that is why the letters of support from your institutional officials are very, very important. Then talk about how do you plan to assess the success? How do you plan to monitor how you're going? Are you going to continuously monitor so that you can change courses along the way? And what would be your measure of success at the end? Is it about whether, if it is a research administration grant, are you talking about, how many more grants have been able to be submitted, or how well the post-award management and things like that have been managed? So think about how you will measure the success of this program. What are the outcomes and how successful are those outcomes with respect to the institutional's infrastructure development? And then environment, of course, you want to have those letters of institutional support, but environment also means, are there people that you can rely on within your own institution that will stay there and be able to contribute to that sustainability? That's one of the things we want to absolutely be sure of. Then in terms of the application itself, when you're writing it, you can think about who the beneficiary will be. Obviously, we want it to be the institution, but you're also, the beneficiary are the people that are working in those offices or want to set up that kind of a function. That may not be a real office, but it could be a group of faculty getting together and say, okay, we will do the human subjects protection reviews, or we would provide assistance for the biostatistics piece of grants that others need to write on. So you want to be able to think about who the beneficiaries are and whether the functions that will get set are going to be available to everybody. Training for LMIC staff, faculty, and to enhance their skills applicable to increased efficiency of the operations, providing technical assistance are obviously they will be preferred. And I know there are just some examples here, and you will be, we'll have a recording of this available to everybody so you can go over these in more details later on. Then you need to justify the need for the infrastructure support area to be developed at the, I'm having a difficult time reading my slide, sorry about that, but you want to have, you want to justify the need. Why do you need that? I mean, don't you already have it? If you do have it, then why do you still need another one? I mean, there's always the opportunity to enhance. Newer technologies come in, newer methods of doing things have come up. Maybe you want to improve efficiency by bringing in, adopting these newer, and we've had several G-11 grants that have done that. So you want to think about things like that, not just you just are applying for something without knowing why you're doing it. Describe an evaluation plan. I've already gone over that. That is very important because for us, that evaluation plan and the outcomes, and I read the final RPPRs quite avidly to see what was the outcome. Was this program a success? And in some ways, I am at that crossroads right now, trying to figure out if this program has been successful since 2012 or 2013, and should we continue this or change it or just do away with it? Because we think it's very important, And I need to be able to justify to the advisory board and to my leadership that we need to continue with this. And therefore, I need all the data, and that's where I get the data from to see what the outcomes have been with those that have completed the program. These are 3 links that I provided. If you go into the Fogarty website, we featured 2 of our grantees that have had very successful G-11s, one in human subjects research ethics area, and the other one is research administration, and how they have reached out and established both of these functions in a very robust kind of way that now builds the network around each of those regions. So that may be something that you can take a look at. The budget, okay, the budget is around 100,000 in total costs, and that's what you have to work with. And we think that that is quite sufficient to be able to do this specific type of training. And remember, this is not an education. This is not about a degree training. This is about training to carry out certain functions that are important for the research areas. The project period is for about 3 years. The costs of key personnel and staff traveling to the different places, as far as the training, I mean, the cost for the travel is allowed as long as it is related to the particular training, particular grant related activities. This will not pay for meeting travel for the PIs or the collaborators or anybody that is is not a trainee. So the traveling is just for the trainees to be able to go to meetings, to be able to present the work that they have done, again, related to the grant, related to the infrastructure. The meetings have to be relevant, not just go to any scientific meetings, because that's not what this is about. This is about going and learning, presenting, learning from the others, how to come back and reset your program's goals and needs, and how do you modify some of those things. So it needs to be for that particular type of activity. And that is all I wanted to say, but I'm sure there are many questions, because when I went through the FAQs, when I went through some of the questions, there are other things that I can answer, and I would rather get those questions from you and answer them directly. But here is another place where you can send, if you don't get to asking them, this is the email address to which you can send more questions, specific questions. Any doubts, you can send it there, or you can send it to me. Vicky can answer any questions related to the grants management and the budget side of things. And if Vicky is here, I'm going to ask her at this point if she wants to say anything about budgets. And then Jane can answer any question in terms of, setting up meetings, or she's very helpful in terms of the knowledge that she has about what our activities are going to be with respect to programs. So Jane is another resource. And I think that would be my last slide. Yeah. That's it. I'm going to stop sharing now. Vicky, I just saw you come on. So if you have anything you wanted to say.
Where did Vicky go?
I don't know, but I think I start seeing hands coming up.
Hi, Keitha. Thank you.
Hi, Vicky. Yeah.
I think the main hitter point I want to let everyone know right now is that grants are to the institution, so you want to keep that in mind. It's not to your specific department or research group. So the goal of this G-11 is benefiting the institution, not just yourself as the principal investigator of this G-11 grant. And then any questions to the budget, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you, Vicky. Over to you, Jane. You can. Are you going to unmute?
Yeah. Miss Lee?
Yes, hi.
Oh, I can hear you now. Yeah.
Yeah, one question is, can multiple institutions within one network apply as an MPI grant? And I'm sorry if I missed this, but so the PI have to be in the LMIC, correct? But they
No.
need to be working with a US institution. I guess
Okay.
there was that is two parts of the question.
Okay, what's your
whether
first question?
MPI is available, MPI, multiple institution in LMIC within one network apply. For
Yeah.
example, certain infrastructure that we need at multiple places. For example, clinical trial infrastructure development. So the question is, can multiple institution apply as MPI? The second question is, who need to be the main PI? Is it the LMIC or is it the US institution or both?
Yeah, so let me answer that. And it was there on the slide. I guess I missed telling you that. So when you say one network, I don't quite understand what that network means. If you're coming from those days of ATRIP, that network meaning was a little different. So we did away with the term network. When we use the term network, it is bringing people together. So yes, you can bring in different LMIC institutions together into one network and be able to develop the particular infrastructure that you want from using a multiple PI format, and that would be okay. The only thing I would ask you to think about is how distant are these institutions, and how well connected will they be if you're going to be offering a training, just one training by one person. Just think about the logistics of it. So it is allowed. You can definitely do it. And then in terms of your second question, does it have to be a USPI? No. Wasn't that your question? It can be an LMIC PI. It can be a USPI. It can be an LMIC USPI as multiple PIs, but all of the activities is going to be at the LMIC institution for the LMIC institution. The LMIC institution is the beneficiary, and the others that are sort of participating in that. Does that answer your question? Okay. Second one. Immaculate.
Thank you, Geeta.
Sure. Go ahead.
So I'm from Kenya.
Yeah.
We just applied for a G-11 that we are hoping to get funded. So our objectives, and what we have explained in our strategy did not include things like attending conferences, which would be helpful or would be like a resource to achieve what we aim to. So my question is whether, if it is funded, would incorporating such in our budget be unallowable if the cost can be accommodated?
Ooh, I want Vicky to answer that question. Post award, what can you do? Vicky?
Thank you, Gisa. Post award, you are allowed to rebudget your funds. There are some limitations in the NOFO, for example. I might be confusing NOFOs, but in general, for example, salaries, it cannot exceed 25% of the total budget. So if you're rebudgeting for salaries, it cannot exceed 25%. If you are rebudgeting for the purposes of travel, for the most part, it is allowable. You cannot have significant rebudgeting, meaning you cannot take 50% of your budget away from training expenses to support travel, for example. So it's situationally allowable. If you have any questions, of course, please reach out and we can provide more details specific to your case. But in short, yes, you can do that.
Thanks, Vicky. And I want to add to that by saying, anytime you want to do anything before you do it, I mean, most of the times these things have to be done through your administrative officer anyway, but check with Vicky when it comes to finance, check with me when it comes to programmatic stuff. before you actually take the step to do it. Okay, next.
Olabile. Well, sorry, I messed up your name.
Thank you very much. My name is Olibile.
Olibile. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a quick one on the LOI. You did mention that it's not mandatory, but it's strongly encouraged. So if you submit an LOI way ahead of the application deadline, would you typically get feedback on that? Maybe to say you are not eligible to apply or something like that. Sorry if I missed that in your presentation.
No, definitely. Definitely you will receive feedback. I go through all of them. They usually start coming in exactly on the deadline date, and I very quickly look at them. I don't get enough time to do a very serious search, but 90, I would say 75% of the time, all I get are names, not the actual plan. So if you want to send me something very early on and you have a concept even now, you want to just talk about whether this would fly, I definitely will give you feedback on that. I won't give you detailed because I'm not allowed to give you, write your grant application for you, but I can definitely tell you, is this going to be responsive? What other things would you need, etc. I'll definitely be able to give you feedback. So the LOI deadline 30 days before the application, that's what NIH thinks, you can do this in one, if you have things ready, you can write it in one month, right? But you can definitely come in before, or you can tell us even 2 days before that you plan to apply and you're going to be submitting one for whatever purposes. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
Sure. Yeah. Jonah.
Thank you, Gita. This is very educating and it has clarified a lot of things that we have concerning G-11. We have one G-11 in University of Jos in Nigeria, focusing on improving research administrative structures, and it has really helped in creating awareness and raising interest among researchers in our institution. So my question specifically to G-11, we still have a lot of infrastructural support for us to advance our research agenda as an institution. So my question is, how many applications are allowed per institution for the G-11 per cycle? For example, the August deadline, how many distinct applications could come from University of Jos, for example? Thank you.
Yeah. So like any other grant application that people submit to the NIH, there is not a limit on G-11 is not any different from any of the other programs, right? Or mechanisms. You can apply more than one G-11 for this program, more than one application, but all of these applications have to be scientifically distinct and different from each other. That is just like any of the other scientific applications that people make to the NIH. Within that, so if your institution has already been given, let's say for research administration, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and you're coming back with the same application again, or for a similar purpose, then we are going to ask the question, why? We've had institutions where, for example, and I know this is how I answer questions, is by giving you examples, is we have had one or two institutions where a program was given money to develop, let's say, a research administration office and the whole setup so that you could learn about pre-award, post-award management, do that well. There's an office set up to do all that. And that has been going on for a while. And then comes another PI from the same institution for the same purposes. They apply for a G-11 to do the very same thing, but this time it's focused on just their own program, having their program manager learn how to manage things, etc. And everyone can say that, yes, we're going to share this knowledge with others around, but practically that doesn't really happen because it wasn't set up that way for the institution. So those are the types of situations where we're going to come in and start asking questions. Otherwise, yes, you can apply more than one. as long as they're all different and distinctly different from each other. Yolande?
Hi, yes, thanks. I wanted to ask just to confirm eligibility. So there was a sub-bullet on the slides that said institutions in upper middle income countries that are also members of the G11, the G20 cannot apply. But then the next sub-bullet said exceptions are sub-Saharan African countries. And I just wanted to confirm if those two sub-bullets were linked. In other words, if the institution is from an upper middle income country and is a member of the G20, but is also in sub-Saharan Africa, is it eligible?
The former applies first. If you are an upper middle income country and you're a member of the G20, you're not eligible to apply.
Even if you're in sub-Saharan Africa?
I want to say yes, but that's something, that question has never come up. That situation, linking them together has never come up. So I could have a special, inquiry into that. I want to say what I said was correct, that they are not going to be eligible, but let's just, we'll get back to you on that.
Thank you very much.
If you want to write to me exactly, which country, etc., we can make it a little bit more targeted.
Thank you.
Sarah Guthu.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Geeta. Thank you. You stated in your presentation that PIs must have HIV expertise to lead these projects, as the NOFO still includes this specific language. We're planning a collaborative proposal between a U.S. institution and an LMIC partner. My question is, do the PIs at both institutions need to have HIV expertise? Or would it be sufficient if the LMIC PI has HIV expertise and the US PI has expertise in the specific infrastructure support function that we'll be focusing on?
Right. So I would say it's the PI team that is important. That's why we have the multiple PI structure set up at the NIH. So as long as a team, they are going to be able to fulfill both those needs. So somebody brings in the HIV expertise and the other one brings in, it's the knowledge that you need to have, because, most of the times it's not the person who gets the grant that is actually doing all of the work, but they know how to manage it. They know who to get to manage those programs, right? So you should be okay as long as the team collectively is contributing to that knowledge. And again, unfortunately right now for this FOA, we need that HIV expertise because that's how it was set up. I don't want to go against the FOA and say, no, we are really wanting this to be open to everybody. We have to follow the FOA, you as well as me, because it was written up that way. But do it as a team. And it's all about convincing the reviewers at this point.
Okay. May I ask one follow-up question on eligibility too? And this kind of segues off of Yolanda's as well. If UMIC institutions are not eligible, does that mean that for applications like ours, where we do have this partnership, does the LMIC institution need to be the primary submitting, or does it matter?
I'm trying
the
to
work, of course, will be focused at the.
I'm trying to picture the scenario here. The UMIC, say that again.
So if upper income countries are not eligible, institutions in upper income countries are not eligible, we have a collaborative proposal plan where we are partnering with an LMIC institution. Does it matter can the US institution be the lead submitting? We are thinking about going this way just because we can facilitate the review and make it a lighter lift on our partners.
You said upper middle income, not upper income, right? So yes. The US is the only upper income country that high income country that we partner with, and we allow that. So the US can apply, but they will apply either, you have a multiple PI. We always like the LMIC institutions to have a person there who can be multiple PI, but sometimes it doesn't work out because they have to be learning the ropes, etc. So US can definitely apply in conjunction with the LMIC. And you're talking about the upper middle income country. If they're not eligible, can the US apply? But in that case, what happens is that both of them, you need to be working there. Only the US can get the grant.
Okay.
The upper middle income country cannot.
Okay.
However, having said all this, for everything, those countries that are not allowed, like for example, this one with belonging to the G20, those are high income countries, and those countries that are excluded can be training partners. They just cannot be given the funds.
Okay, thank you.
Does that make it clear? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Ted?
Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much. I also have a little similar question. The infrastructure is more institution-wide, and you are framing it from HIV. So are we focusing the infrastructure to be HIV-driven or institution-wide? Because this kind of program is not definitely HIV is probably it's a program, not the entire thing. So
exactly,
how do you address this kind of approach?
Yeah. This is exactly why I wanted to have this kind of discussion, is because this causes a lot of confusion. So this is not about HIV. Biostatistics is not only HIV. That research administration is it's not about HIV. It's the way it was framed was because we were getting money from the HIV program. And so we needed to make sure that it was going to help the HIV community, because those days, that's how it was all set up. Those days we had a lot of money for HIV research. So we focused this on HIV. And so if you're doing that, then the PI having some HIV expertise became important, because otherwise, what are you going to be doing? Remember that this is not just about research administration. There are other things in there. There's, the literature library setups where you want to train people in trainees who are going to be conducting HIV research or learning to be HIV researchers. How do you teach them to then look for projects that are going to be around HIV? But the literature search itself, the way you try to identify gap areas, the way you do the searches, that has nothing to do with HIV. It's about teaching them how to get to it. That's why I said that, because we have to have this be focused on the HIV community, there is going to be spillover, research ethics, all of these things is going to spill over to everybody that comes and attends, because we tell our PIs to open it up for the whole institution. Anybody can come and apply, and they can take that teaching and knowledge and apply it to their own non-HIV areas also. So that is where the HIV comes in. Doesn't necessarily mean that it only applies to the HIV research. The outcome is about building the infrastructure, but that infrastructure, for example, someone wanted to set up an instrumentation facility to do, fax analysis and cell sorting, etc. It needs other things beyond just the idea, but it is going to have to cater first to that community of HIV researchers who need that kind of facility, right? But that doesn't mean others cannot come in and use that facility. And the people that get trained in the lab technologies isn't going to be able to help those others. But you have to show the output at the end of the grant that it has helped the HIV community achieve something. I don't know if that makes sense to you. Ted? All right, I can't hear anything.
He's muted again.
You should be able to.
Yes, sorry.
Was that clear? Yeah.
I was disabled in the meeting. I think, thank you very much for clarification. Yeah. And in terms of, just a follow-up, in terms of the HIV research, how big or how if sufficient you are considering? Is it, is the amount of projects, the number of projects going on? What is really your benchmark?
Yeah. And that is another annoying thing about why it was never put in the beginning. Again, like I said, when it began, there was just no end to the HIV money that was available. So nobody thought about it, and it just continued. And I didn't go in and put in anything because we felt that there was so much HIV research going on anyway, not just through NIH grants. It doesn't have to be NIH grants. You just have to have sufficient amount. And we didn't specify sufficient, for two reasons. One was deliberately you don't have to do it, because there may be others who can come in with collaborations, etc. So we didn't really specify the upper end, unlike NIAID that has another G-11 program much smaller, and they do it only for research administration. They specify who can apply and the amounts, etc. We didn't do that. So when we say substantial amount, I usually go back, and it's not a review criteria. It is a review criteria to see that the institution has some HIV research going on, who the PIs are, but I always go back to the PIs later on if they're going to be considered for funding. It's not just one grant with one PI, but there's a group of people, 3 or 4 people doing some work, and there's a potential that this would continue on, or there's a network, there's always clinical trials going on. So it's something that we have left it a little loose, and we may need to tighten it up a little bit. But if I tighten it up, then it becomes problematic for some others who can get in. So I'm trying to figure out how best to incorporate that. So I would, if you're thinking of applying and there's a little bit going on, put that in there. And we can always think about, how to evaluate that. Okay. And sorry, that's the best answer at this point, because I am at the stage right now of changing a few things, when I do the renewal, and this would be one of them. Okay, Jane, next one.
Okay, Carol Mitnick.
Hi, this is Carol Mitnick. I guess it's a good segue from the last question. So the definition of HIV or HIV related research for NIH has changed quite a bit the last decade or so. And I'm wondering whether related research like TB or Hep C would be considered responsive for this, if that's where the experience lies, or TB HIV work.
Yeah. So again, this is about developing the infrastructure that has, wider implications. It is going to be helpful for the wider research community, right? RCR training, all of those things applies to everybody. The same thing applies to everybody. But in terms of HIV and HIV associated, if you can show that, again, this is in this last round, we still have to abide by the approvals from the Office of AIDS Research on how to spend our HIV money. So we say, make sure that there is some HIV associated research going on at these institutions, so we can say it is definitely helping the HIV community. So HIV associated TB, HIV associated Hep C, HIV associated, diabetes, whatever it is. But as long as you can say that this is enhancing the HIV community or HIV research for that community, I think that would be fine. And just because the FOA is asking for expertise in HIV, get a collaborator who can guide you or put in that, at least satisfy the review committee's examination of, is there any HIV expertise here to be able to say, we need this kind of biostatistics training for the HIV kind of research, or we need this for the HIV research, etc. I don't know if that answered your questions. I think Ted can lower his hand now. Carol, is that
Yes,
somewhat
yes.
helpful? Yeah.
Thank
If you come across specific questions, please, and if you're thinking of applying, don't hesitate to call me, email me, any one of you. Always, please make sure that you won't get all the information right now. And you have any questions that come up, either send it to that email address, or you can just email it to me. Do not ever feel shy.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you have another question, or did you just not lower your hand?
Anyone else? Can you cut off his hand so I know I don't have to address that?
Yeah, I think it was the previous
Yeah.
question. Do you post the webinar, this meeting? I didn't get, I was partly attending. So do you post this meeting recording?
Yeah, I think so, Jane.
I think so. I think communication is going to work.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we'll let you know. Or you will find it on the Fogarty website. You know, always anything you want, you know, will always be on the Fogarty website, and they'll definitely do it. But I probably will wait till May 22nd for the next session, and then we'll do it. So wait for a month at least.
Yeah, we're going to email everyone once it's posted.
So when you say the next session, do you have another session?
Yeah.
We have another session on May 22nd.
On the same topic or different?
It's going to be the same presentations, but it's going to be different participants, so they may be asking different questions.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
So while I'm waiting for others to think of questions, so we did have an FAQ posted on the Fogarty website, and this was a while ago. So what happens is that these concepts, so if I, for example, the HIV-RT, let's say the G-11, it always goes hand in hand with the other two HIV-RT. How it's going to be in the future, I don't know, but right now it's all still bundled together with the HIV group. We posted FAQs at the time that these were published, and we haven't gone back. I haven't gone back and changed a whole lot, or because no one comes up with questions. No one has come up with problems in the FAQs or any kind of discrepancy between until now. There was one person who brought that up, and I think I answered that question. I don't remember it now. I think it has something to do with the HIV research and the expertise of the PI. I think we've discussed that very well. So go through those FAQs. If you have any questions there, you can definitely write to us. But I think I've gone over all of those FAQs. And the way these things work is, so I'm talking to you all now, and I'm getting some questions. I'm getting some discrepancies that have been brought up that we will try to address. So because this FOA is going to end in August, I have to next year. We are going to have to renew this. We have a cycle, of 3 to 5 years, and then we have to propose a new concept. Remember, in 3 to 5 years, research changes, life changes, and there are many new things that need to be incorporated. So we have to present a new concept. If you still think that research infrastructure development is very important and our grantees don't have it, we are going to go back and talk about that, and then get concurrence from our leadership. After which we go to the advisory board, get a concurrence from them. That's a public meeting, and it's always posted on our website. Anybody, and you all can also join in through the web. And once that gets done and gets approved, then we start writing our concept, because we get advice from many different people on what we should include, what we should remove, etc. So then we start writing that concept. And I'm sorry, writing the actual FOA. That FOA or NOFO, that then goes to our internal NIH Office of Extramural Research. That also includes the Office of Extramural Policy, etc. All of those people have to be looking at it and make sure that the language we put in there, the asks that we have, the requirements that we have, they are all not biased in any way. So it goes through a lot of screening and scrutiny. It takes about a month or two before we get all of that clearance. And then once we get that, it then gets published. And that's when you see it, okay? So before that time, anything that you can give me advice on, anything that you think should be included or is confusing, I can definitely take that into account and make sure that it is going to be, you know, better understood or give you more clear guidance, etc. Which is why I keep asking for input from you. So that's the whole process. It takes, so I have to now, I'll take after May, I will look at all of the responses. I will change a few things, make it more clear, and then it will go to our board sometime in the fall. And once they give that clearance, then we start writing, and then it goes through internal, you know, edits, etc. We try to make that happen. You will obviously not get all of those things, but any bright thoughts, anytime you have, and you think it's important, send it to me. Oh, there's one more hand up there.
Hi, thank you very much, Gita. It's a
Yeah.
wonderful presentation and very useful replies to the questions. My question is, for example, if we are looking to have some training here as a capacity building, so how detailed should be information about the, like, this is the agenda for the training, and we are looking exactly for this trainer to come, for example, to Kazakhstan, or how specific and detailed should be written and described in the information?
So it is a training, right? It is a training, and you may be aware of the D43 training where you put in a lot more detail with respect to the students, the coursework, and so on and so forth. This may not get to that level of detail because you really don't have students getting trained or attending, you know, extended coursework, preliminary coursework before they go on to do their research. So you won't be doing that sort of a training here, but the training is going to be something about, they may have to attend a course. Let's say it is to do with understanding PCR technology because somebody wants to build a lab where they're going to want to provide that facility for the rest of the research community. Not everybody has to do it, right? It's breaking up nucleic acids, getting some analysis done, and then you know, not everybody has it or wants to do it. So there you would, you know, they may need to go to some kind of a class or a coursework. You may want to talk about that. But it's not very detailed. The training is more about how you are going to train them and in what you're going to train people so they can fulfill that particular function. So the research administrators, for example, they will need to have some, and Vicky knows more about all this, they may need to have some kind of a financial, you know, a training in some finance or accounting or something like that. So that's the training they will do. It's, you know, so whatever you need to include in there, you don't have to include a whole lot as long as it gives us that idea. I don't know, Vicky, if you want to add anything, but I don't know if that's clear. Is that
Yes, clear.
Sholpan? Yeah.
Yes, Sholpan, thank you, from Kazakhstan. Thank you, Gita, it's clear.
Yeah, yeah. And please feel free to ask questions if you come across any more of these, you know, nitty-gritty details of what you need to include.
Thank you.
Vicky?
Hi, Jay. Okay, yeah, thank you. I just want to also add, in response to what Gita was saying, it's like if it's training that's related. So for some G-11, for example, it's very focused on administration. So maybe they would send them to big conferences, for example, that's focused on administration training. So the pre-award, post-award management, you know, that in itself requires a lot of knowledge and expertise. And of course, Geeta and I are also here to help you through it too. But at the end of the day, it's what does your institution need and the budget required to support that for future, if that makes sense.
You know, the other thing that I think it would be good to touch on right now is when you make your budgets, you make the budget on a year-by-year basis. However, sometimes you're not able to use all of that money and you end up having some extra money that you want to carry forward. We want to know why you have that extra money that you have with you because you couldn't spend it. Why did you not spend it? Why were you not able to spend it? There are many reasons. You started late or something happened, the trainee didn't show up. So you want to be able to clearly enunciate why you have that money. And now that you have the money, you didn't finish a few things last year, this year, we want to now use that money to finish it, or we want to change the focus and put it somewhere else. But that money, this carry forward money is differently used than you already are going to be getting your second year money for whatever items you said you were going to do. You're going to get that. So we want to be able to distinguish those two. So this is just an added, it's not in relation to any of the questions that were asked, but I thought it was an opportune moment to talk about budget. Second thing I wanted to say, since we talked about the training and the details of the training, etc., we had situation in the past. Again, like I said, things have changed a lot from 2013 to now, and the evolution and money is obviously drying up everywhere, all around, including for the HIV folks. So what people were able to do before, they're not able to do now. Also, because I think between Vicky and me, we are pretty tight in watching everything that is being done. And I know some of you don't like us for it, but oh well. What I would say is think of this as a training not to develop students to get their degrees. There are still some grants that seem to be using students to perform some functions, which is fine, but you know that that is not going to be building that infrastructure for that institution on a long-term basis. Students are going to get their degrees and leave. And so we want to be careful about how you use the money. I mean, again, you can do what you want, justify it whichever way you want. And if it is, you know, if it is something that we say, oh, I don't want to break my head over this, it's okay, let them do it. Anyway, anybody can leave at any time, etc. We can do that. But if there's going to be another grant that is going to do it very well, and we get the glimmer of hope that this is going to be a permanent, you know, infrastructure, then that's where it's going to go. So I want to make sure that everybody understands that we are doing this for the institution, not to train students. This is not a D43. This is not even a mini D43. We want to equip that infrastructure office, that infrastructure facility to be able to continue this as a service for the rest of the community. So another thing I want to throw out, for example, you have IRBs in universities. Usually it's made up of faculty, you know, younger investigators maybe. They are all invested in their own work, their own research, etc., but they volunteer time to do this. So it becomes an IRB office within the institution, but it is managed by a maybe non-scientist just for management, administrative management, but it is still the PIs that are the faculty that is putting in that effort. So there isn't a real office per se, there isn't a building, etc., but it's a group of people come together and this is the office that they manage. This is the function that they provide. Those are the places where you can have some training, right? There are newer methods. There's electronic ways of doing things. So somebody goes and gets trained, they come back and train other people. That's the kind of training we are talking about. We're not talking about, oh, we are building capacity because now we are training the student to learn all these things. And then what? You know, they'll do it for 1 year and then go away. And then what happens to the institution? So be aware of things like that when you say we are looking for something more permanent. And we definitely want your institutional officials to be involved. We don't want to have the same type of a grant within one university, one in this corner, one in the other corner, doing the very same things, and they're not talking to each other, because that's a big problem for us. It's money. It's money that is going to one university 2 or 3 different times, when we could definitely take the part of that money and give it to a third person who's been waiting, you know, to receive something like that. We want to build those institutions that don't have anything. So the institutions that are already doing something, have done it. I don't want to name names, but you can all, think of all of those successful institutions. If they are able to then bring in another institution that really needs that help and do that outreach, that's what we are looking for. We want to build up. That's what is called capacity building in our books, not just within your own little, sphere. So think of it that way. It is a training program, and that is the other part that really is problematic, because we call it a training program, and reviewers get confused. I think they bring in two different things together. PIs get confused. So we're going to try to see how we can clean that up. But since you're all listening to me right now, I want to try to tell you that training is different here. But this is not about building equipment or the lab space or anything like that. We need those trained people to be able to do that. That's why we are putting in the training component and building capacity through building the human capital.
I got an email from Esther Munalula. You have a question, Esther?
Is she on?
She's on, but she's not answering.
Anything on the chat? I see 29.
Yeah, Esther, you just need to accept the unmute. Her hand is up, but she's not unmuting herself.
Yeah, and I think you have to go down to your own Zoom and then unmute from there too. Anyone else meanwhile? So talking about, those examples of training, there was one that we a while ago saw where they were building a research administration office, but they were training the chief, the person that was going to be trained and managing that, to go get an MBA degree. That was not something that this grant allows. So it's things like that that you have to be careful about. Esther?
Yes, please. Thank you so much for giving me the floor. Some of which I'd wanted to ask have been asked. And so one of the things in order to go into detail before we actually submit our letter of intent is I would have loved to maybe out of this space to get in touch and just ask some of those specific questions. And that's the email that I sent because some of the things you have already highlighted and we understand the training that we want to do in the context that you are explaining. And so have to just bounce our idea to you instead of actually speaking on detail on this platform at the moment. Thank you very much.
Understood. Okay.
Daniel has a question in the chat.
Okay. What is it? I can't read. Maybe I can. Let me see. Can you read it, Jane?
Yeah, let me
my
open
chat.
it.
I don't know. Where's the chat?
I'm trying to unmute him. But...
Oh, I see.
Except for library, is it possible to include IT tools like computers to do training for staff, or hardware and software is not included as mentioned at the beginning of the presentation?
Yes. That is for the budget. You're asking about the budget, right? Yes, anything you need, smaller items. And I think Vicky, you can explain that because you're the one who's going to approve things like that. But things like laptops, it's there. It's pretty well. I read through the whole word by word, the FOA, and it definitely explains there what you can buy and what you can have. So things like software, things like computers, laptops, as long as it pertains to the trainee and for the training needs are allowed. But make sure that you know anything I'm telling you here, make sure you go back and reread the FOA or the NOFO and relate what I've said to that. And if there's a discrepancy, get back to me.
Yeah, as long as your justification can explain the necessity of the item that you would need to purchase, for example, software. You know, the software is needed for whatever it is that pertains to your program. So that's your justification. I mean, justifying the reasonableness of the cost, right? Because from grants management perspective, we're looking at the reasonability of the cost, how it relates to the grant. Does it fit the goals and objectives, how it helps you achieve those goals and objectives? So I personally like to use who, what, when, where, why, and how as my general review of your budget to see, you know, does this all make sense to achieve the goals that your project is looking to achieve?
There was one question that I got through the email at one point about whether the library services or trying to set up a library services is a viable option for a G-11. And I think we have that in one of those items that we had, or one of the areas that we had itemized. Definitely, because this is where if you had that centralized facility for trainees or students to go learn how to do literature searches, how to come up with the identifying gap areas, how to come up with a concept, etc. Those are definitely areas that could be centralized. There are other areas that could be centralized, you know, like the RCR training, responsible conduct and research training, human subjects is definitely there. And we put in a few more other things in there, but anything that you can think of, you know, justify why it is important for, you know, the research environment and how you plan to do it. I think those are all included. So we don't want our infrastructure development, you know, the ERDA program to become only about one or two things, even though we know we get a lot of research administration areas, but we want all these other areas to be developed too, because the fact is that people are applying for grants. So there is definitely a grant system. It's a question of enhancing that grant system, but there are all of these other areas that trainees will really benefit from that we would like to see some development in those areas too. So do that. And we have about 1 minute left. If there are no more questions, and if there are questions, you know what to do. But the one thing that I wanted to tell you, for those of you who are thinking of applying, I would go through the FOA, and this is not just for this G-11 program that we talked about this last 1.5 hours, but for anything, go into the review criteria first and see well, definitely you need to know the basis for why we are doing this program. So the beginning parts are always important, but in terms of actually writing it, the review portion gives you an idea of what we have asked the reviewers to look for. They generally will have everything, that the standard format that NIH wants everyone to have, they have that. But for our specific FOAs, we'll put down something specific to say, specific to this FOA, we want these to be examined, things like that. Well, read those sections very well, and then go to the application section, which is what details out what you need to include. And I think for this G-11, I know it is extended, but they're all related, and I made it very painfully, you know, detailed there, because if you read through that, you know, I would just go and answer those bulleted questions there, or the bulleted points, write those out. And then as you're writing them, you already have your grant sort of done with the right kind of information. That's how I would go about writing this. Okay. And you would have covered the infrastructure. You would have covered the need for that infrastructure, how you're going to do that training, et cetera, et cetera. So I definitely go through, answer those bulleted statements, write it down, And as you write it down, you sort of see it, your program, your application already developing with the right information. Those are the important ways, because that's what you will write. And that is where we get the review questions from, that is going to the reviewers. And that's what the reviewers are going to look at. I struggle a lot with trying to tell CSR and the reviewers how we want these programs to be. And I have other programs, and we try to make it very clear to the reviewers that Fogarty wants these sorts of, applications, these sorts of considerations, and we try to make it very clear to them. So if you have done your part very well, then I have the ammunition to go back and say, no, they put that in, this is what we wanted, but you didn't look at it. I have that ammunition. But if you don't do it also the right way, then I don't have anything to go back and fight for you. So make sure that you do your part well. I think I'm trying to do my part well. It's not always, how you want it, but try my best. So this is my last advice to you. If you are applying for one, and if you are an institution that doesn't have a lot of support, I think you should think about writing this, and talk to me about it, and we'll try to get you others that you can collaborate with who have more experience in this, and then try to make for a stronger application. And that's all I want to say. Don't think it's ended. So feel free to keep writing, and into that email box that was on the notice, on the notice, as well as in the slides, or to me. Okay, anything else? Anybody else? Jane, have I answered all the questions on chat?
Yeah, I think so. Does anyone have any other questions?
Okay. Tui? One last question from Tui. Can't hear her, so put it in the chat. And over to you, Jane. You're faint.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Can I just ask? We are from Vietnam. So
Yeah.
I'm Hoa from Vietnam. I work with Thùy. Actually, Thùy registered her name, but my name is Hoa. And I work with Thùy on the HIV study. We in Vietnam, we don't have a few capacity from university for handle grant, like Vicky just shared post grant management and things like that. That's it. We can send our staff for training overseas, right? Because I don't think that capacity is available in Vietnam for training.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing is,
you mean when you write a grant and it was successful, and you have plans to send people outside to learn from them, you can do that, or you can work with your collaborators in the US and have them come there and train more people. You can do it that way too.
Yeah, thank you. That was my second part I want to ask. You answered all. Thanks so much.
Okay. Jane, I am done, and we invite questions, and thank you all for joining. Hopefully this was helpful, and hope to see more applications from you and get support from you all to continue this program.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky.
Thank you,
Jane.
Geeta.
Jane, thanks for setting it up.